And back and
T-minus 6 minutes, 45 seconds. We're starting to hear activity on the countdown net. We did our standard go, no go poll. That was held at about T-minus 2 hours. We began loading propellants at T-minus 70 minutes. Fuel is currently loaded on the second stage as planned, and we are finishing up the first stage. We are in the middle of about a 1-minute top-off that began 30 seconds ago, and we've just heard the call out. The stage 1 fuel load is complete. Liquid oxygen loading is continuing on both stages. That'll wrap up between the T-minus 3 and T-minus 2 minute marks. HISPASAT's satellite team is go for launch. They confirmed at T-minus 14 minutes they were on internal power. No further activities from here. The Air Force range is ready to support. The areas are cleared around Slick 40 for flight. The weather, both at ground level and upper altitude winds, is good and go for launch. So with all stations indicating go for launch, let's take a closer look at today's satellite.
We live in a hyper-connected world, surrounded by information, and with consumer habits that are oriented towards greater freedom of movement and a demand for increased flexibility, reliability, and capacity in communications. We need connectivity of the highest quality wherever and whenever needed, regardless of whether we are located in a remote area or we are moving at high speeds. To respond to this growing demand, HISPASAT launches the HISPASAT 30W-6 satellite. From its orbital position at 30 degrees west, HISPASAT 30W-6 will replace and expand the capacity of HISPASAT 30W-4 and thus complete the current phase of the company's growth plan. HISPASAT 30W-6 has beams that point to the Mediterranean, Europe, Spain, Northeast Africa, and the American continent. And it increases the operator's Ka and Ku band offering, as well as incorporates a new beam in the C-band. With this configuration, HISPASAT 30W-6 will provide broadband internet access to help bridge the digital gap in North Africa, Latin America, and the Iberian Peninsula. Reinforce the distribution of audio-visual content in Latin America, and provides connectivity in high-speed trains and maritime services in the Caribbean and Mediterranean. HISPASAT 30W-6 is the fourth satellite of the HISPASAT fleet built by Space Systems Loral on its 1300 platform, and it involved the participation of Spanish companies to manufacture components and develop the ground segment. Furthermore, HISPASAT 30W-6 incorporates a Ka-band receiver demonstrator based on photonic technology, and its modules have been designed by DAS Photonics and Trio. With services similar to those of the current receivers available on the market, the application of photonic technology to these types of components will make it possible to significantly reduce its mass and volume in the future. The launch of HISPASAT 30W-6 will be carried out on a SpaceX Falcon 9 vehicle from the Kennedy Space Center facilities in Cape Canaveral, Florida. From its orbital position at 30 degrees west, it will provide high-quality telecommunication services during its more than 15 years lifetime. HISPASAT 30W-6, growing connectivity.
T-minus 2 minutes and 44 seconds. We're counting down to an on-time launch. Everything looks good on Falcon 9. First stage propellant load liquid oxygen has just completed. Second stage is wrapping up. The strongback has moved away the degree and a half from the Falcon 9. We're getting ready to pressurize for flight. Next activity at T-minus 1 minute. The flight computer on the Falcon 9 will go into startup, taking over control of the countdown. The HISPASAT satellite team, they are go for launch. The range is go, the weather is go for launch, and so now at T-minus 2 minutes and 10 seconds, we're going to listen in to the last minutes of the countdown of Falcon 9 with HISPASAT 30W-6.
Stage 2 lock load complete. Falcon 9 is on internal power. Vehicles in self-line.
Ground gas close and start.
M1D fuel bleed complete.
AFTS is ready for launch.
M1D engine show complete.
Ground gas closeout complete.
Falcon 9's in startup. Stage 2 is pressed for flight.
LD is go for launch.
Falcon 9 is configured for flight.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
Proceed to station 7 against launch pad operations.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion terminal.
Tower telemetry normal. Vehicle is supersonic.
We're just over 1 minute into flight. Falcon 9 is passing through the period of maximum dynamic pressure.
Vehicle is experiencing max Q.
You've heard the call out. We're now experiencing maximum dynamic pressure, where the velocity of the first stage and the density of the Earth's atmosphere combine to create the greatest loads on the rocket. We're through that period. Merlin engines have throttled back up to full power. Propulsion indicates nominal. Power and telemetry also reported nominal. Next major activity just a little under a minute from now. We'll have the main engine cutoff, followed by stage separation and ignition of the second stage engine. T+2 minutes into flight. We've got about another half a minute left in the first stage burn. Trajectory looks good. We're going right down the middle of the track. We've got a great view from the ground looking up at the Merlin engine plume on the Falcon 9. Main engine cutoff of the 9 Merlin engines in about 10 seconds.
Eco.
Stage separation.
Recognition.
Coming up on 3 minutes into flight, you hear the applause here from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We've had a good first stage shutdown, a stage separation, and a good ignition of the upper stage engine. Right after ignition, you may have seen a couple of pieces of metal coming off the nozzle. That's normal. Those are stiffeners that go around the bottom of the nozzle for use in transporting on the ground. They fall off as we go into flight. Next event coming up in about 10 seconds. We're going to wait and watch for fairing separation.
Second stage is following nominal trajectory.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Again, the applause. You saw a good payload fairing separation. The fairing separating into the two halves and falling away. We're coming up on 4 minutes into flight. GNC reports trajectory is good.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
Acquisition of signal Bermuda indicates that the Falcon 9 telemetry is also being acquired by our ground tracking station in Bermuda. Upper stage engine power continues to be constant. Thrust of the Merlin Vacuum D engine is good. We're coming up on T plus 5 minutes into flight. Looking at the trajectory map, Falcon 9 continues to go right along the planned path, heading east from Cape Canaveral into the first of 2 orbits planned for this evening. Now currently, we're planning to burn that upper stage engine for just about another 3.5 minutes. We may also hear callouts in a little more than a minute of entry burn. The first stage, as I mentioned, will go through the pre-programmed re-entry and landing sequence, but there's no drone ship stationed out in the stormy Atlantic to be able to catch the first stage. Coming up on 6 minutes into flight, we've got another just over 2.5 minutes to go on the second stage engine. Very quiet on the net. Falcon 9 second stage with the HISPASAT satellite attached, performing nominally as we head downrange from Cape Canaveral. Currently, second stage will be accelerating up to about 4 Gs. As a reminder, the HISPASAT 30W-6 satellite, as Elon has tweeted out, is massing over 6 metric tons. That's over 6,000 kilograms, and that is the largest geostationary satellite we've ever flown.
Saved.
Given the size, as you
Stage 1 entry burn is started.
You heard entry burn start in the background here. As I mentioned, going through the pre-programmed sequence.
Nominal trajectory.
Stage 1 entry burn is shut down.
And we have shutdown of stage 1 on the entry burn. That'll leave its landing burn coming up in about 1.5 minutes. Second stage continuing to run. Everything looking good on stage 2. Seven and a half minutes into flight. The glowing nozzle on the upper stage engine, that's expected. Shows the engine's running just like we want it to be. We've got cameras on the back of the second stage giving us these live views. We're about 1 minute away from SECO, second stage engine cutoff number 1. That will leave us in a parking orbit. Once we get engine shut down, we'll wait for the guidance engineer to confirm that we have a good orbit.
Vehicle is in terminal guidance.
We heard a call out vehicle in terminal guidance. We're getting ready to go into orbit. coming up on 4G's acceleration.
Thank you. ATSS saved.
Flight termination system on stage 2 is safed.
Seco.
We've got shutdown of the second stage engine. The completion of the first burn on time. Waiting to hear a call out.
Good orbital insertion.
And there it is. We've heard good orbital insertion of the second stage, still carrying the HISPASAT 30W-6 satellite. We're into the first orbit. We're going into a coast phase now. We'll wait until the orbit takes us over the equator on West Africa before we relight the upper stage engine, and that'll put us into the geostationary transfer orbit. Now, before we get to that phase, we've got a little bit more video that'll give you some insight into the satellite we're flying tonight. We're just under 11 minutes after a great liftoff of Falcon 9 from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral. The first stage did its mission. Second stage has done the first of 2 planned burns. We're into the desired orbit. We're now in the coast phase, as I mentioned. As you can see from the animation, the orbit will take us over Western Africa. As we cross the equator, we'll relight the engine, transferring the HISPASAT 30W-6 satellite into the desired geostationary transfer orbit. Now, it's still several minutes before we get to that reignition, so we're going to stop live commentary right now. We'll come back live with the webcast at T plus 26 minutes, but we will leave you the animation so you can see how the second stage is orbiting around the Earth, coming up on the point for reignition. So with that, we'll pause now. We'll be back in just over 14 minutes at T plus 26 minutes.
Bermuda loss of signal expected. 1, acquisition of signal.
Back chill.
Welcome back to the live commentary of Falcon 9 flight with HISPASAT 30W-6. We're just past T plus 26 minutes. The upper stage engine is chilled in, and we're about to have the second of 2 planned burns of the upper stage engine. This one will transfer the HISPASAT satellite into the geostationary transfer orbit. We're getting contact through our Gabon tracking station in Africa, and now we're waiting for ignition of the upper stage engine.
MVAC ignition.
And we've heard confirmation, MVAC ignition. This burn will last just about 50 seconds. Now this short second burn of the upper stage, while it's short, will increase the velocity by about 25%. At the same time, will slightly lower the inclination of the orbit closer to the equator. We're now throttling down to keep G loads below 5 Gs on the satellite. Burn continues to go well. We're coming up on shutdown.
TECO.
We've had SECO 2, second stage engine cutoff. Now we're waiting to hear guidance confirm the orbit accuracy.
Good payload insertion.
And in the background over the speaker, you might have heard we have a good insertion orbit for the HISPASAT 30W-6 satellite. So that completes another major event in today's flight. The second stage is now coasting again. There's a view of the HISPASAT satellite with the sunlit portion of the Earth in the background. Now we've got several minutes before the actual deployment of the satellite, so we're going to suspend live commentary again. We'll be back in 3.5 minutes at T plus 32 minutes to witness the HISPASAT satellite release.
Acquisition of signal, HPK.
We're at T plus 32 minutes and 5 seconds. Falcon 9 second stage and satellite are in the desired geostationary transfer orbit. We've actually got a very accurate orbit that we achieved. Next up, we're going to see satellite deployment. In this mode, the flight computer will send redundant commands to open the separation system that holds the satellite to the second stage. Small compressed springs will then push the satellite away from the second stage, and that'll complete deployment. We're expecting that deployment coming up in about 15 seconds. Camera showing alternating views between the nozzle of the second stage engine, the HISPASAT 30W-6 satellite on top of the second stage payload adapter.
Spacecraft separation confirmed.
And the cheering from the late night team here in Hawthorne. We have telemetry and video confirmation of the HISPASAT 30W-6 satellite successfully separated from the Falcon 9. It's been a great mission for Falcon 9, our 50th Falcon 9 flight. Countdown was on time. We launched right at the opening of the window. First stage flight was normal. Second stage went through 2 burns. Both of them gave us good orbit insertion. And then finally, as you just saw, satellite deployment right on time. Nice view from the camera on top of the second stage. So that's going to end our webcast for this evening. We'd like to thank our customer, HISPASAT, for their confidence in SpaceX, the Eastern Range for their support, the Federal Aviation Administration, our commercial licensing agency, and of course you, the viewer, for clicking on the link to follow us. Now, if moving humanity out into the solar system appeals to you, please check spacex.com/careers for openings at our factory and launch and test sites. Look for updates on our next mission on social platforms and our website. And with that, I wish you a good night from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, United States of America, planet Earth.